Hello?
Hey Debs, how's it going?
Yeah, all right.
I've been laying down some ideas for this documentary,
yeah?
putting some beds together. But I'm having a little trouble with the title. I've got some ideas, but
Actually, it's okay because it's a series, so there's already a title.
Okay. So what's it called?
It's called The Picture of Bristol by...
What, so what, me, Roni Size?
Yeah.
Raise it up, show some love, and make some noise for Mr. Roni Size.
This is the sound of Bristol inside. This is the sound of the DJ Roni Size. This is the sound of the DJ inside.
I'm Roni Size. I was one of the first drum and bass artists to win the American Music Prize. And this is a soundscape to my city. All the tracks that you're gonna hear have been inspired by my life in Bristol, and some of the music I will still be working on throughout this film. But this documentary is basically a picture of my life in Bristol surrounding the music over the last maybe 2 decades, giving you insight into the journey which has helped me to progress in becoming a successful DJ, producer, and someone who is running their own record label in Bristol. Putting the music together for this documentary was quite moving. There were times when I wanted to try and capture the mood of what I was feeling at the time when it happened, and there was times when I'm trying to capture the mood of what's happening now. There's music with no drums, so the energy is just quite somber. And then there's music with drums to reflect the energy of where I come from. I come from Bristol, and I try to represent the streets of Bristol, of which I've walked. And hopefully this film, it's going to give you a picture of where I come from. Before I can move on, I would like to be able to put something back here to ensure that I did actually do something with my talent or with the position that I'm holding. Bristol is my hometown, so I don't just see it the way it is now. I see it as being a journey of my whole life. St. Paul's, Gloucester Road, Easton, these are all the places that have affected me and made me who I am and made my music what it is today.
Juggling equipment, which basically it flashes and you use it for performance. Juggling. Right, can I go now?
This is my lab. This is where everything goes down. And these are the tools of my trade. Drum and bass is a music which has been growing for the last decade, which came out of jungle and the free party movement. For me, rave music was the beginning of this music where people would combine elements of reggae and they would combine elements of hip hop to come up with a pretty British sounding music. Laying down beds, creating ideas. The tracks you hear are still fairly raw. For me, this is still work in progress. So far, so good. Creating a soundtrack of Bristol is definitely a challenge. Most music has a signature, whether it's rock, pop, whether it's hip hop or R&B, whether it's orchestral music, opera music. It all has a signature and has a time scale. If I'm making drum and bass, then basically I'll start with drums, get a big intro together, and then drop into like some stinking heavy bass line. Sometimes it's good to go in the studio with no idea whatsoever and just, see what sticks. Just throw it and see what sticks.
Oh, distortion. But we don't mind a bit of distortion. Distortion's all right, that's the nature of the sound. It's the nature of the sound, so.
I'm often asked, if I wasn't making music or a musician or producer or DJ, what would I be? And my answer is probably in trouble. When I was about 15 years old, I got kicked out of school. And that was when I started to go to Sefton Park Youth Club, which later became known as The Basement, a place that understood my energy and allowed me to find out who I really was.
I've seen some kids drop from the top of these trees, boy. Yeah, man. I've climbed pretty much every tree in here.
I wouldn't say that I was an angel, but I would say that if I didn't have the basement, then maybe I could have walked the wrong streets and I would have ended up in the wrong part of town.
This is a building which kind of gave me a sanctuary, allowed me to be able to come into an environment and learn how to use samplers, turntables, stuff that I couldn't really afford, like a drum machine, a mixing desk, reel-to-reels. I learned a lot about how to manipulate the technology and just trying to understand how to make music with computers. This is my school. Build it up. Something like that.
Oh, the first record I bought, that was Curtis Blow, These Are the Breaks. Bought it on 7-inch, bought it in Virgin Records when I was about 14, 15. But that was the first record I ever bought. But my brothers used to send me, every weekend, I used to have to run up to the shops with a list of records to buy. And that's how I first started buying music. I really look up to my brothers. They're the ones that really got me into music first, by them buying turntables or buying a sound system. I remember my mum as well. She came from Jamaica with a whole heap of 7-inches, and I remember you used to go through the records and there'd be some Elvis and there'd be some Pat Boone, some Nat King Cole, there'd be some dub stuff, some Bob Marley stuff. I used to play these 7-inches every single day, until they were scratched. Sometimes I would break one of them and I'd be like, it doesn't really matter because I still play from the halfway mark. The basement has now moved into an area which is right in the centre of town, where kids can now just walk off the street and straight in. It's great to see now you've got kids that come from Hartcliffe, Knoll West, Southmead, from Westbury, from all over Bristol.
cause I'm shadow, man. I don't care who you are, I rip your face before in the dark, cause I'm Drago, man. Pick you up like I'm your dad, little man. Little man, it's not good. As a Martin, I draw like a British should. Oh, now, boy, what's really good? You just a pump, so don't boy like a hood, yeah.
I remember I used to wait outside Sefton. I used to be there, it used to open at 7:30. I used to be there at least 5 to 7. Do you know what I mean? I didn't have a choice, man. I was there. Back in my day, it was 10 pence subs, sometimes 20 pence. I think it went up over the last year. You know, for me, when I first came to the basement, it was very different from what it is now. And it's good to know that some of the money which, you know, I donated back in 1997 from the Mercury Music Prize, it's good for me to actually know that it did actually do something and it's a positive thing. So if there's one thing that the Mercury Music Prize did, was to be able to sustain a building like this. You know, everyone like cooks a little bit different. Everyone's a different kind of chef, so, you know, but I like to just keep it rolling, so I like to make the tune. So once I start playing the bass, I don't stop all the way from the beginning to the end. I think there was a time when people believed that, you know, the music that we was making was basically, you know, just underground music, and it didn't really have, you know, a chance in hell of being able to reach into the overground. When we did win the Mercury Music Prize, I think it opened up a lot of people's minds. It done the music justice. The music's well-travelled. You go to parts of the world now and the music is, you know, it's there, it's in your face, people know about it, so that can only be a good thing. You know, people said we were crazy, but we just believed in what we was doing. We've all, you know, been working hard for this, and this isn't, you know, just about me. This is about, you know, this. This is St Andrew's Park. This is one of my old stomping grounds, you know. Even though I'm pretty well travelled and, you know, there's no secrets that I've travelled to the four corners of this globe. And so, you know, I always try to remember my roots and where I've come from. And this is just one of the places which helped me to work out who I was. Having my mates around me as well. There'll be times when we'll be up here and we'd hear the slight rumbles of bass coming up through St Paul's. And it was here that we used to venture down into St Paul's to find the music. It was the music which always kind of, you know, came calling. It was like Pied Piper. You hear something going on and then you just follow the sound of the bass. So I've got like a synth sound here, which I'm building on. Just real simple, really, you know, this is, to me, this is Bristol. It's just like, it could be any time of, you know, just, this is Brit. And then familiar, like, and this is where it comes back to me being a B-boy. The hip-hop, the funk, you hear it all in the sounds. So I start off with my raw loop. Bring in some Buffalo Girls, for those who know. Have my Rhodes. And start to create my ambient. To me, this reminds me of the atmosphere of Bristol, when it's dark, when it's light, when it feels like it's a full night. So this is me. So once you have that, the next thing you need is to make sure that you have your set of drums. From when I was about 16 years old, this was the route that I always used to take into St Paul's, you know, crossing from St Andrews, going straight through Montpellier, you end up in St Paul's, especially on a Saturday when it was St Paul's Carnival. Me and my mates used to always run all the way through Montpellier, and you know, as we run closer to St Paul's, we could hear the music, you can hear the bass line just pounding,
and you can hear all the crowd and you can hear all the MCs on the mic. And that was just something which, you know, just opened up your imagination, especially coming through this bridge. You would hear the bass and the sound would just change all the time. And that was the exciting part. When we got to this point here, we used to speed our walking up, and this was it. Yeah, memorable times for me. What up, bro? You cool? Sick.
Well, he just came over to my house. She is my sister, and I have came from here.
Once we got the kick drum, we started to add snares. There's that familiar beat that everyone knows in drum and bass, which is, you know, we call it the two-step. And then we wanted to get it moving. Add some, you know, some energy. Maybe one break. Maybe add 2 breaks. These are your break beats. These are your break beats right here. Break 1. Break 2. So that's how you get the energy, and this is the kind of energy that I want to be created on the soundtrack to this this documentary. As well as being into hip hop and soul and reggae and R&B, you know, I was really into James Brown. James Brown, to me, was the funkiest guy on this planet and still is. You know, for me, just listening to his music showed me about arrangements, showed me about how to keep a groove, showed me about trying to EQ a certain drum sound. Sometimes when I write lyrics, I don't necessarily write them for people to perform. You know, I mean, I'll write the lyrics just because I'm looking for inspiration. If I'm making something that's quite vocal, I'll work with something that's quite melodic. Maybe, you know, it's down tempo or up tempo. And what I'll do, I'll try to just make sure whoever's coming in as a vocalist, that they've got a key to catch on to. Holly G is a good friend and a vocalist who works and tours with me and has come in to lay down a vocal for one of the tracks.
So we just go?
Just warm your voice up, innit?
Take it to a cold summer. Ooh. Hey, take it to a cold summer. Oh, hey, take it to a cold summer. Hey, I'll take it to a cold summer. I'll take it to a cold summer.
You know, I used to walk from St. Paul's to Easton pretty much every single day, going from, you know, St. Andrews over to Easton to my brother's studio. You know, there was a time when the basement could only take me so far, so it was great that my brother decided to build a studio. And, you know, that is where I really learned the tricks of my trade. As well as like going to Easton, like to the studio, I used to also go this way to get to the Trinity Centre, which is my church.
Once donated by the council to the Afro-Caribbean community, the Trinity Church became a popular gig venue and is still one of my favourite landmarks.
Playing here every weekend definitely was an experience. I remember coming here when I was about 12 years old, probably even younger, and to see my brother performing in a play called Freedom City. I think I was between 10, probably a bit younger. I came here with my mum, and I remember when my brother got up on stage and started to perform, I felt like the most special person in the building, bar my mum, because he was in the lead role. And it's just great to know that, in the history of things that, when my brother performed, about 10 years later, I was up on the stage performing as well, playing music with my best friends. Being here, right here in the centre of the dance floor, I can remember the bass, shaking the floorboards, hearing the sounds of the MCs, as well as being on the stage. I can remember, being on the dance floor, just listening to the music, being in the huddle, getting down to the sounds. For me, that's what Bristol's about. It's not just about being up on the stage, but being able to come down into the crowds and to be a part of the whole scene. I think that's part of it.
Being brought up in Bristol was, for me, something which helped me to be able to really understand about how important your community is. From playing on pirate radio stations, then coming out onto the street, you get direct feedback. You may see someone in the car and they'll give you a toot because they've just heard you on the radio, and that's been a real important part of my journey.
A lot of the times when I'm asked in, magazines by reporters, would my music still sound the same if I didn't live in Bristol? And my answer is always the same, it's no, because my influences come directly from Bristol. In this small city, there's been a massive influx of, punk music, there's been reggae music, there's been two-tone, there's been jazz, there's been house, there's been techno, there's been rock, all these different styles of music which has been, in Bristol at some point in my life. Especially when it came up to St. Paul's Carnival. St. Paul's Carnival was and still is one of the biggest stages, for young black people to come and show who they are. And, that is the place that kind of gave me inspiration to see the sound system, to smell the food. It was a day that we looked forward to, the day where we celebrated, our parents coming to Bristol, our West Indian heritage. Say something with picture in it. What can you think of with picture? Anything, yeah. Picture, is it called a picture of, isn't it? Yeah. Picture this.
Okay. Picture this. Picture this. We are here. Picture this. We are together.
Okay, I'm gonna record.
You know, I never had piano lessons and I didn't really learn a musical instrument. And one of the things that I'm doing at the moment is currently trying to understand and master the piano. You know, always want to better my ability, especially in playing music. I've always wanted to learn how to play a musical instrument. So be able to sit down and be able to play the piano and play any record or any tune on the piano would be something that I can't wait to do. I'm alright. Today you have to be multi-talented. You can't just be the producer, you can't just be the DJ, you can't just run the record label. I think nowadays you have to do all three. The stage I'm at the moment, I'm really in a DJ mode where I've just made a whole heap of music and I'm currently, you know, DJing in every town and every country and every place that I can to so many different styles of audience to, you know, to see how the music's, you know, working, to get a reaction. An honest reaction. The only way to get a real reaction is by playing music and getting a crowd, you know, response. I often find myself in places where the language can be a real barrier. I'm there for only one night, but that doesn't really matter because what does matter is the music. You know, that's a hard question. If someone asked me, you know, where I wanted to play the most, it would probably be, you know, in front of the people that you love and respect the most, and that's got to be Bristol. Has to be, doesn't it?
Picture this. Oh, we are together, you and me. Picture this. One day, alone, you and me. We are together.
And you can help us to create a picture of Britain online by submitting your digital photos at bbc.co.uk/a picture of Britain.
Imagine a boss as annoying as David Brent, but also American. Oh, The Office, an American workplace, is at 9:30. But next up tonight here on 3, we're off to Trauma.